What's going on, creators? Yeah, I just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate y'all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I'd like to continue the conversation on just mental diets and hopefully add something positive to your mental diet. Stuff that's kind of I'm going through, kind of dealing with, processing, unpacking, all that kind of fun shit. It's just things I catch in my own self of these patterns, these unhelpful beliefs about reality, that ultimately aren't even real or true, but for some reason, just through repetition, they become on some level real or true. And not to say that they're true, it's just becomes kind of like the feedback loop that you begin to experience. It's like, oh, everybody hates me because of X, Y, and Z. You start holding on to these beliefs that are kind of retarded. Then all of a sudden, like all of your interactions like start to mirror these beliefs. And once you realize that's happening, it becomes more and more insane to continue to have beliefs like that. Because it's like, why would I want to continuously suffer and experience these shitty feedback loops if I can think the exact opposite and still experience a loop, but it be like a loop of joy and happiness and bliss? It's like, and you start to learn that through experience as you become more and more present, how these things start to play out more and more so. And you can see it with your own eyes, so this is really kind of geared towards people that are already doing that. Not so much people that are just now finding out the news is mostly lies. It's like, we're at different levels of things, so it's like, oh, well, this guy's crazy, it's like, what's crazy to me is continuously suffering and believing lies and then reacting to them all the time. I feel like that's crazy. And what's kind of interesting about this new way of going about things is getting out of the reactivity to mainstream culture, reactivity to people and circumstances and events. Once you realize that so much of like what you're experiencing in life is from basically the past beliefs and assumptions manifesting, it becomes more and more easier to not get so triggered. I'm not I'm obviously still I get triggered by things, and like the difference between that and now is being faster at like catching that. Where in like I could be triggered for months in the past. It's like I could be thinking about somebody who is like an asshole, or like some situation that like felt like a really fucked up situation, and it's just like months that would bother me. Where now it's like, maybe be bothered for half hour, even half the day. But then it's like you still have like the same realization as like I'm just like attacking the other person in my mind, or the situation, wishing it was different, like boo-hoo, poor me, I'm a victim, why does these things keep happening, but then all of a sudden the realization starts to come in as like, how long am I going to keep telling myself that story and feel miserable as a result, and ultimately start experiencing my fucking day-to-day situations start to spin out then too, because it's like, once like for me, it's like once I start getting angry and irritated, then it starts just spiraling, into this shit show of just one thing after another going wrong. And by wrong, I mean just like not what I desire. So it's like, if my desire was to take this paper and like fold it in half and set it back down, what would happen is like I'd go to fold the paper and I'd give myself a paper cut. And the kind of shit just keeps going on and on and on. And so it's like realizing that that's on purpose, and that it's a result of just creation doing what it does impersonally, because it is very impersonal. It's really if you want to feel scarce and like a victim, you'll find all of this evidence to support that. The same thing with like a lot of like conspiracy theory, where it's like, so you could have a belief in almost anything, and then see like reinforcing information, this whole rabbit holes of that. It's like, oh my gosh, it's been going on for 3 centuries. It's like I barely even believe my own family history, let alone pop culture history, and you can start spinning out, which I think is important to go through a phase of that, because it kind of lets go of a lot of like these strongly held beliefs about like, oh, I came from nothing that exploded into something that just all this entropy just ended up just being, chaos, 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 and now it's just like everything's just like balanced and like and you can continue this on and on. It's like, oh, then I came from pond scum, then I turned into a fish, then a talking monkey, and then I'm this. All of these like kind of like beliefs and stuff. That so much of it was just like taken on faith as like a child. It's like, oh well, that's what my parents had me go to learn this stuff, so it's got to be real, right? And like but you start realizing every culture is different, and like there's people right now in existence that live in the jungle that don't have no idea that plains exist. And it's like they have totally different cultures, but then part of the madness of like the old man is thinking it knows everything about every culture, I almost like godlike in my knowledge of everything, and there's no surprises, there's no mysteries, everything is happening because this is how I know, this is but everything starts to break down, as you like dive into it with like I don't even say a skeptical mind, it's just as you learn these different paradigms of like science, and I don't think there's anything wrong with science, because science is a process of trying to figure out truth, and what I have an issue with is the scientism religious aspect of like, this is like the atheist version of truth, religion. You have these priests of science that just dictate, and not to say like religion is any different, because a lot of that is ritual. I mean, you see in large scale ritual at the moment, but like even outside of that, with these different religions and stuff like that, there's different rituals and customs and beliefs. Everybody's different, and so it's like, this idea that we're all the same. I mean, we're all connected, but all of the programming and all the cultural indoctrinations are all different, and once you realize that, it's almost easier to have like maybe more sympathy towards people, especially like people that are expressing the complete polar opposite of you. It's like you'll see a lot of that in culture in the United States at the moment, between like the quote unquote right versus the quote unquote left. When both are, there's positive aspects of either one, and there's negative. I mean, it's just kind of about your story that you're telling yourself about these different binaries, because the old mind needs that kind of separation for the contrast, and ultimately it is kind of helpful in defining who you are now, to have experienced what you're not, to be like, well, I know I'm not cold water, because I'm obviously different than that, and so using it as contrast and redefining things is also very important, but part of like the kind of the issue, it becomes the us versus them mentality, the tribal kind of shit that goes on, but like you see that now with like the vax versus the unvaxxed, where a year or so ago is the mask versus the unmasked, and then before that is a war. It's always going on. It's like, oh, race war, this color versus that color. All of which are labels that are not who we are. But like the old mind needs a lot of that kind of stuff, because it believes it's a brain and a body that's separate from everybody else, separate from God, separate from life situations, circumstances, events, all that kind of stuff. It just thinks. And then it uses these outer means, which everything in creation is unique. Each person is unique, has a different tone to their skin, different color eyes. Nobody's exactly the same. Even twins, that are virtually identical, there's some tiny thing that separates them, like a snowflake. So to look at the uniqueness of all things, and I think that's one of the biggest mysteries when it comes to the metaphysical, and kind of like the walk of faith, is how there can be oneness and connectivity of all things, but then having everything be unique, is a dynamic that's interesting on some level. And there's so many mysteries out there, like the mystery of marriage. What is that even about? I think a lot of that is about the inner projecting outwardly, and mirroring the two, the inner state being in balance with the outer, and getting more and more into that kind of balance. A lot of that has to do with just letting go. It's like you don't have anything really to learn how to do that. You just have a bunch of shit that basically bricks that you've picked up over the years of beliefs that don't serve you or don't make any really logical sense, or limiting your sense of identity, because the entire thing is about identity. That's why you're seeing a lot of like identity politics, being mirrored in culture, because the more and more people that are experiencing the awakening, the more that's reflected in the politics, in the culture, in the media, and so much of that transition from the old state to the new state, has to do with this initial walls of resistance hitting first. And so a lot of that darkness that has been kind of just somewhat normalized, is being brought more to the surface. And it almost feels like almost like a joke. It's almost like, everything feels so ridiculous, and a lot of that, I feel like, at least, is it's just these resistances that have kept culture in this kind of beast system mentality, because even the quote unquote elites, are unconscious, for the most part. They're reacting, they're taking, and this is like kind of like the joke, where it's just like basically everything that like the Build Back Better or whatever is already what is going on. So it's like we got to destroy it so that then we can rebuild and have grocery stores and then like a government and like libraries and all. It's like it's part of the insanity, though. It's like, oh, we got to destroy it to create something, when it's like you already have it. It's just part of this weird kind of mindset, that part of like steal, kill, and destroy, kind of like that mentality of the old mindset that we've all, we all experience that, but like, others, quote unquote others, where it's just like, that are participating in like the Great Reset or whatever, again, it's this binary, the reset versus the awakening, the mask versus the unmasked, the vax versus the unvaxxed, the powers of good versus the powers of evil. It's just this constant binary, where once you realize that consciousness is being externalized, and more specifically your inner man, your soul, maybe is a way to describe that, who you believe in your consciousness yourself to be, when you maybe go into a dark room, go into a closet, turn the lights off, close your eyes, and kind of lose track of your body and your physical surroundings, you still know that you exist. You could be in heaven or hell, and either way you're conscious of being. And that's what I'm talking about, that consciousness of being, that I am kind of awareness, that that you exist. Into what level you're connected with that, is what gets externalized. And so much of that, what gets externalized, and ultimately God's projecting this out in the screen of space in your life, and all these situations and circumstances. So it's like, you don't need to really focus on control. That's an aspect of the old man. It's like you have to control everything because you feel like you're separate and alone, and in trying to survive, thinking that things are scarce. And that can be a trigger for a lot of people, or like scarcity, because money itself is such a trigger for people, but like scarcity versus abundance thinking, it starts to become mirrored in your life, and so it's like, it's not just money scarcity, but it's scarcity in time, scarcity in friends, scarcity in food, your ability to help others. It's just like, there's just not enough. There's not enoughness. That kind of mentality, versus like abundance, where it's like you realize that your abundance comes from God, and God is all things, and God will bring that to you based on basically your ability to hold the state first. It's like you hold that energy first, that you are abundant, because that's the truth. That's, as you hold on to the truth, and you find the truth by going into the Bible and looking at the promises of God and believing them. You don't have to create anything new. It's already been done. It's like Jesus already did it, for one. You've already been blessed. Think of God like as the sun that's always just shining. Your limiting beliefs and assumptions and these programs and thought that keep reoccurring, shut the curtain but all you have to do is take the curtain down, and the sun's didn't go nowhere. It's like the thing that's keeping you in these states and experiencing these feedback loops, is just misidentifying yourself, connecting back with the old man that was ultimately an illusion, instead of connecting with the new, which is who you are now in Christ. And so it's important to catch those faster and faster. And when you get these reoccurring things that are causing suffering, especially, or just things not working, it's just like, well, yeah, I'm not really super suffering, but like my goals are not being achieved. The desires in my heart that I feel like I can do are just not coming together. A lot of that has to do with your beliefs, and trusting in your own power of force versus just holding on to the state, that you feel like you're lacking. A lot of it is just like a feeling. You feel like you're lacking, but you can reinterpret so many different things and revise them, as Neville Goddard would describe. In the law of assumption, revision. He actually said that that's like one of the most important things that he said. Like self-described, from him. He said that was the most important thing. Is like learning the art of revision, which as you practice that, because everything that we're experiencing, we have a little story about it, and a lot of times when things are going undesirably, the story that we're telling ourselves is brought to the surface of our consciousness. So it's like, say it's like you're trying to put a nail in the wall or some stupid shit like that. And you bang your finger, and it's like, oh, I always do stupid things like that. It's like, why are you telling yourself that story? You're just manifesting that in your own life by your belief in it. It's not real or true, but to you it becomes true because you have experienced that repetitive thing over and over again. So now that now just by telling yourself that over and over again, now you believe it, and now you expect it. Part of like I believe faith is having that kind of expectancy. Like you expect things to either go wrong or to go right, both of which are a choice. Then that's the most important thing to realize, that although it may appear, that these things are happening without any type, this thought's just coming to me. It's like, well, why? Ask yourself why, and ask God why. Ultimately, you don't got to figure it out yourself. God's already figured it out. And God's already told you. It's like the problem is your refusal to believe it. It's really that simple. It's like all you have to do is believe it, that you've already been blessed, and God's promises are true, and God's got amazing things in store for you. It's like God's your healer, your provider. So basically, if you really believe the promises of God, and follow the advice of Jesus, which you're encouraged to do, seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Because all these things, are corresponding to a spiritual, metaphysical thing. So it's like everything physical has a spiritual backing that comes first. And so catching these patterns that are keeping you in these like feedback loops that are maybe even neutral. They're all neutral, but it's like it's not a big devastation, but it's just like you just gotten used to it. It's like, oh, I'm used to people kind of disrespecting me. Well, just because you've gotten used to bullshit behavior doesn't mean that shouldn't be reflective of who you are. When God created you, and God says you're a masterpiece, and if you are not experiencing more of that kind of feedbacks, it's like you're experiencing limiting beliefs, and they continuously, confront you in the present moment. But as you realize more and more so that these are past beliefs and assumptions, so, it's like everything in like the 3D, the shadow world, is a result of past action, thought, speech, action, your behavior, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't just fade away to the oblivion of the past. It's always circling back. Time does not work left and right linearly. it's quantumly, it circles, it comes back around to confront you again and again, so that you have another opportunity to define yourself. Are you going to be in scarcity again, or are you going to display abundance of what you actually are, who you actually are? Are you going to be tricked again and believe that you're the old identity? Or are you going to, this time around I'm going to choose the new identity and demonstrate that? And one of the things that kind of triggers me, is like when it's like, okay, I know, that this is kind of like projecting out like this, but then when bad things happen, it's like immediately just trying to be resistant towards it, not accepting it, and just being like, oh, they must have made a mistake, or, something happened, or this or that. Trying more so to, and I'm not saying this is easy, for me to do, but like looking at it as like, okay, well, instead of like trying to instantly manifest the opposite desire, realize that this was an opportunity that came to show, to demonstrate this new belief, and that in the quote-unquote future, it won't happen the same way. It'll be more reflective of this change in states, because it's like you're always confronted with the old state first that's locked you into this state, the resistance. Normally it's the fear barrier, that's or just a story that you told yourself multiple times, that you just believe because your parents made you feel worthless or something, or like abandoned you, or weren't very loving, or were very strict and authoritarian, and like very conditional in their love, and all of this shit, is, we gotta let this stuff go, and like using what happens to move forward. Once you realize it's the past confronting you again, it's not God constantly sitting there tormenting you and punishing you, which is, a belief that God would do that to you. That's something you can let go of. And as you start to let go, the new it's always unfolding in the present moment. So you don't got to go very far to see how this works, because it's always working. You've already been doing this. It's already happening. The problem is we just are learning how to use the metaphysical laws the way they were intended to be used, instead of just, it's like, oh, well, here's a vehicle. I'm not going to teach you how to operate it, and you just turn the key on, and then like, you're just revving the engine because you don't know how to put it in drive or something. It's like, and then sitting there getting frustrated and irritated. It's like, well, this machine is horse shit and it fucking sucks, and I want something different. And it's like, well, you just don't know how to use it correctly yet. And so part of this is like learning how to do things that are a benefit, that bring you loops of joy, loops of fun, loops of peace, loops of, because it's awesome when you have I would say more aligned beliefs with God, the truth that that is already out there, and then as you believe it, then it comes back, and it just builds and builds and builds and builds, and it continues to build until then all of a sudden another belief asserts itself that's a limiting belief, or some fear, or some shit that comes back to confront you. And it's like, do you want to continuous, and revising why that happens is important, to kind of take some of the emotional charge out of it. It's like, oh, even though it could be, a very fucking insane argument with your spouse or something, or just some big shit show drama at work, or any of these types of things, when those happen, it's like, oh, this doesn't work, and I'm just tricking myself, and all these times, then it's like, well, why do I believe that? It's like, why do I keep telling myself that story? And it's like, oh, maybe these things are happening so I can see what story I'm telling myself, and then actively choose to ask God, what's the new story? What's a better way to think of this? It's like, you don't have to create the thought. God gives you the thoughts. So it's like, when something happens, it's like, well, how does this make sense with my new identity then? And don't be surprised when all of a sudden, boom, you get like a little insight or something. It just comes to you, and it's like, oh, well, that makes a lot more sense. And like a lot of times you can start letting go of the stuff that's just not working, and by not working, it's just the opposite of what you desire. It keeps manifesting. And so looking at these loops more through more through a a different lens is important. And not to say, you go from 0 to 100. Realize this is a process, and that ultimately God's already done the process. I mean, you don't have to worry about it. You're exactly where you need to be. So it's like, don't start shaming yourself or guilting yourself. Like, oh, this person's at this level. I feel like I'm down here. You got other people way up. It's like, we're all exactly where we need to be. So stop shaming yourself, stop guilting yourself, and and realize that now is when you feel good. So it's like, the problem is that thought of shame and guilt or whatever. Well, what are you doing in the present moment now? Are you going to sit there guilting and shaming yourself, telling yourself stories that aren't real? Or are you going to go, oh, well, that's just like a past belief or assumption. That's not actually who I am. I'm not this thought, but that's just something I believed for a while. I can choose to believe something different. And the more that you do this and see how that has an impact in your perception of reality, and a lot of times your life circumstances, events, you start, like for me, doing handyman jobs, having a handyman business, having a music business, having done a lot of like self-employment businesses in the past like 10 years, it's like a knowing at this point that God provides, and you don't got to worry about, you don't got to worry about it. As far as I'm concerned, it's like you just take action when God brings it to you. It's like God within you is like bringing the people. It's like you just believe that God provides, and then that faith gets rewarded. And it's like as you believe it more and more, it gets to a knowing. And I believe a knowing is a state where there's no resistance, where there's no more fear about it not being true, or like you're being tricked. That's one of the ones I get a lot. Is like, it's like. It's like I start listening to different people maybe that are experiencing, these metaphysical things, and it's like, oh, am I being tricked? Are they tricking me? Because I had some, I still don't have much trust for, others, but I do have a lot of trust in God, and so it's like, it's like, okay, well, I might not trust other people, but, my trust in God allows me to take that risk when people are brought to me. It's like, okay, well, I don't really trust you, but I trust that God brought this together, so I'm going to just go along with it. And that's how I've kind of been processing different things. But it's like, so there's like that area of like my personal life where it's like I know that to be real. But then you would think, oh, well, then logic should say then you should be able to take that one thing and apply it to every aspect of life. But, that's part of like the uniqueness of all of us. We all have this different frequency, this different, whatever. So it's like where I might be like, doing really good with, knowing that God provides, somebody else might be like awesome at like, this is where, this is how you have an awesome relationship with people and be really people, like a people person, where it's just like you really get along with people and be around people and stuff and not isolate yourself and be lonely and all this and that because you just don't trust people and, or want to be around people because they're so fucking draining. But like, but that's part of my drama and stuff that I project out there, not to say that that's real either, it's just a lot of these things have just compounded and compounded and compounded. But revising how you're interpreting them is very important, to not be so amped up and become unconscious about things and then spend the majority of the day just bullheaded and just being a pain in the ass to be around. And then on top of that, then having that inner state, because you're identifying with the old man, start to be mirrored to you. Think of it working like a mirror. It's automatic and like impersonal in a lot of ways. Not to say that God doesn't love you, or anything like that, but it's like creation, has a design to it. So it's like the more you understand the design, the more that you understand how things are playing out. Not to say that you can sit there and like understand all these mysterious ways, but I think it's a process of gradually learning more and more things, and it's through personal experience too. So it's like you don't just sit here and, oh, what does some external expert say now? It's like, go within yourself and the experts within you. Get into the Bible, start going on the spiritual journey yourself. as like Jesus would say, pick up your cross and follow. I don't know if Jesus said that. That was one of his disciples. I think it was Jesus. I don't know. Read your Bible. You'll find out for yourself. But like, other than that, I think I'm going to bounce. So, thanks everybody for listening. Have a good, thanks for liking, sharing, subscribing, all the social networking things. Thank you for your spiritual support and your financial support. Thanks for just being here, vibing with me, and all that kind of stuff. Hopefully helps you on some level, because we all are connected. So as we come together and hear these different things, a lot of hopefully healing is happening. Not division and separation and vengeful thoughts, which is common. I was like talking to a person on Twitter, that they were on the exact opposite side of like vaccine mandates and all this kind of stuff. And as far as I'm concerned with it, it's just like, I don't think the government has any authority or any of this type of stuff to take away your bodily autonomy. I think that's part of a bigger problem, with people. And not to say like governments are evil, like I had that kind of feeling for a long time, the government's evil and incompetent, and not to say that I support endless wars and like the fucking war machine of government and that kind of stuff, but realizing that, God put these people where they're at, and to pray for them, because as you pray for others, you're also, it's coming back on you in this strange way. And so it's like, not to sit there and have hatred towards like the president or like the Congress, all these people, try to have a more forgiving lens, because as you're forgiving others, you're also forgiving yourself, because you're probably doing the same thing. And with identity politics being more and more common, it's a reflection of your identity too in a lot of different ways. And so, definitely try to take a lot of those vengeance thoughts towards the system, out of your being. They're not helpful, and they're actually harming you, because as you're attacking others, you're attacking yourself and losing your peace. You could have peace right now if you weren't attacking others in your mind. And so, it's important to kind of keep that. Not to say I agree with a lot of policies, that are passed. Don't conflate the two. But it's like separate the person from the policies. And not to wish evil on people or wish death on people, because that seems like it's pretty, something's going on, and so, try to get, because as you're wishing death on others, you're kind of wishing it on yourself then too. So it's like, kind of get out of that loop if you can. It'd be helpful, and so, try to look at one of your enemies today. Just a little homework for today. Try to look at somebody that you're viewing as a quote unquote enemy, or and try to forgive them if you can, or at least wish that they have peace. It's like maybe just whatever you can do that's just above your comfort zone. If even that is like, I'm not going to think about them right now, that's a good first step. Because as you're putting attention on things too, you're actually creating more of a problem. That's why a lot of these, I disagree with a lot of the mandates and this kind of shit, because it's like what you resist persists. And like the more that you try to battle and fight against it, the more you strengthen it. And so that's why I disagree with a lot of those policies, because I feel like it's making things worse and snowballing a situation that's ultimately an illusion. So with that being said, I was gonna, with this conversation, is like having the exact opposite points of view. Instead of trying to be right, try to understand where they're coming from. That's kind of a helpful technique, not to be like, that person's attacking me, and so I'm going to become defensive and then attack them back. Try to a lot of the people that are like for the mandates and the authoritarian shit, some might, but or some might not, have like have a strong belief in preserving life and helping others, not to spread sickness and disease to others, and to them, that's a loving people, and so it's a cultural mindset, and so not to sit there and like we're not communicating, if one person's just trying to be right over another person, so it's try to understand where they're coming from and humanize a little bit more. It might help your day, and so definitely try to put that to practice a little bit. And until the next now, God bless.